Good evening. Welcome to the City of Hudson Public Works for Tuesday, January 26, 2016. First item up on the agenda is consideration of Public Works Committee meeting minutes.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second those. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, well, the only main other item on the agenda has to do with the Vine Street reconstruction. And we've talked about it, and what we'd like to do is to go through kind of a cursory review of how we got to this point, some of the key decisions that were made, and the two options that we have on the table for how this project will get completed. Once we get to a certain point, we will take public comment. We'd like people to come up to the podium and speak one at a time. We don't need a group interaction here. That's fun, but not nearly as, it allows each one of you to speak and on your own behalf and others as well. So it's a little more formal, but we're on TV here and everyone else can get your opinion kind of unsolicited. So we're waiting on Jim, but I'm sure he'll show at some point, but we got a quorum, so we're going to continue on. So at this point, Tom, why don't you take it over from here and kind of go through what you had prepared for tonight.
All right. Oop. Wait 5 seconds for Jim, I guess.
All right, cool. I knew he'd make it.
Ready? Okay. In the issue sheet we put together, like as you mentioned, we pretty much we held a public informational meeting to get input from the residents on the 6th of January. Questions and concerns were brought up at that meeting. Traffic volumes, street width, and typical section, which is our diagrams pretty much show a typical section. Speed was discussed, crosswalks and stop signs, on-street parking, as well as bike lanes and bicycle traffic. We invited the residents back again to this meeting tonight to again discuss their concerns. Where we are today and a little bit about the history. This all started with a downtown flood improvement study back in 2010, and it identified flooding issues in various locations, downtown, Locust Street, as well as Vine Street. A second study was conducted in February of 2012 by the city engineers at that time, Vine Street feasibility report. That was pretty much a street feasibility report dealing with the street reconstruction, deterioration, that type of thing. And it also incorporated the flooding issues from the previous study. Recently, City Council ordered Bolton Mank to prepare an updated feasibility report of the 2012 study. That report, feasibility report for Vine Street improvements, was approved by council, and the plans and specifications were authorized to be prepared. For right now, we're about a month out from finishing the plans and specifications, so the hope is that we would finalize those by the end of February. We'd have a bid opening close to the end of March, and construction to start sometime in April. That's going to depend somewhat on snow melt and some other issues, but there are some tasks that likely could start in the month of April, independent of weather. So in putting responses together to the concerns, this isn't just one individual. The engineering staff has worked with Public Works, Community Development. We've talked with the police chief, the fire chief. We have 2 consulting engineers that have been brought into the mix, Bolton and Mink and Short Elliott Hendrickson. I have about a 2.5 page memo here that I'd like to just touch on some of the key points that kind of back up the design, or where the design kind of originates. The memo was put together by Glenn Van Wormer. He's one of the senior project managers for SCH. He's got about 45 years experience doing transportation planning, traffic design, roadway design. Glenn was also the one that put together the transportation piece in the city's current comprehensive plan.
Can everyone hear okay back there? Okay, good.
Okay.
Yep.
So where we are, hit a couple of key points when we look at how to design this type of a roadway. First, we look at function. Vine Street was a one-time Highway 12 connecting Eau Claire and actually connected with the old toll bridge going over to Minnesota. But it is a minor arterial roadway, as recently incorporated into the comprehensive plan. And it is an important segment of the overall Hudson Street system. Traffic volumes, another key piece of the key ingredient that goes into the background and the design. DOT traffic counts are somewhere in the 6,000 cars a day range currently, between 2nd and 12th. As you go further to the east, they're 8,000, 10,000. This is expected to jump. One estimate has 2030 ADTs, average daily traffic, somewhere around 9,000 cars a day. I think with the river crossing in Stillwater and potential development that the city's remaining up by the government center and Points East, it's a pretty square idea that we're not going to have traffic volumes decrease as we go forward in the next few years. So then if we look at street widths, I know the width was one of the biggest concerns here. So if you look at street widths and function, we pretty much start at a 12-foot drive lane for a vehicle. You can use 11-foot lanes, but typically they're recommended on something a little bit less on the volume side and a little bit less on the speed, although we are a little bit low on the speed at 25. But we feel that a 12-foot lane is appropriate for Vine Street. So there's a couple other components that make up that whole street section as we're looking at it, and we'll get to the drawings here in a minute. But we have something that's called reaction distance, which is the 2-foot gutter panel. So from the face of a curb, you have 2 foot of gutter panel that drivers use for reaction when they're driving up the street. Somebody veers over the center line, they use that 2 feet to react to oncoming traffic. So what typically you'll see is a 2 foot along the gutter and then adjacent to a 12-foot travel lane. On-street parking. If you have on-street parking, pretty much 9 foot is the width, and that's pretty much the minimum. A couple things to consider with the 9-foot parking stall, similar to what's out there in the current state, is typically people, or not typically, but sometimes they do not park right adjacent to the face of the curb. They might be out a foot and a half. Some other things to consider is in the winter, snow plowing might not get right up on that face of curb. So 9 foot is a minimum. And then, from there, we look at the Vine Street cross sections. The direction to date with the previous studies and the plans and specs that were authorized by council have the engineers putting together the section that you see on the board that's marked, maybe you want to flop them, Steve, with the 9-foot parking lane is what's currently in the plan. And if you look at that, again, starting from the left-hand side, which would be eastbound traffic, you have a 2-foot reaction area with a 12-foot lane, 9-foot parking, and then you'll notice that the other lane actually is dimensions 13 feet. So you might want to ask, why do we call out 12-foot lanes and show 13? The reason that 13 is there, again, we pretty much have things lined up from a design perspective at minimums. The 2-foot reaction area is a minimum. The 9-foot parking width is a minimum. So if you consider some of the larger pickup trucks and the SUVs with mirrors and sticking out on the side of this vehicle that could be parked here, as well as on the other side, we plan on having a double yellow stripe. That double yellow stripe takes up room, so you pretty much will lose a foot, or at least. That's why the 13-foot is shown there. It's really referring to a 12-foot drive lane with a 1-foot reaction area. Again, we'd have 10-foot boulevards and the existing sidewalks. As we referenced before, we hope to maintain as much of the existing sidewalks as possible. That's the one section. So with that, we kind of change our tune a little bit, and now what would we do with bicycle traffic? Which is our other section. I don't know if you want to flop that other one up, Steve, but basically, there's about 4 different ways we could handle bicycle riders. We could have bicycle riders use the sidewalk, but that's probably not a good idea. We have driveways, bike riders, although we don't think it's a high volume, sharing the sidewalk with pedestrians is, let's just say it's not desirable. We could convert the sidewalk to a wider trail. That would pretty much add a lot of additional cost, disruption to the boulevard. It'd be a lot different than what we're showing in that typical section. We could add bike lanes to the street, and that's what's been talked about in some of the other previous meetings. In Mr. Van Warmer's memo, his recommendation is, and if you look at the 2 lanes we show in the middle, basically what you'd have is you have 2 12-foot lanes. Outside the 2-foot lanes is 2 independent 4-foot bike paths. And then outside that is the 2-foot reaction area that we referred to in the other design as well. That total width is 36 feet. Again, Mr. Van Warmer is actually recommending that if you went with bicycles on both sides, he would recommend 13-foot lanes in there. That 13 feet would be desirable. Again, you'd have that 1 foot extra reaction on either side. That would net result a 38-foot width. Again, desirable. We think we could still build the 12-foot lanes with the bike path, but I just wanted to put that comment out from Glenn's memo. That being said, one thing, not to put anyone else on the spot, but if Marty, some of the concerns from the previous meeting had to do with safety relative to accidents and speed, and if I could have Marty maybe just real quickly touch base. Again, I don't want to put, or maybe let Marty talk relative to the accident and the speed situation that was out there. Those comments were also brought up.
Tom, you gave him the printout of the accident
Yeah,
data?
I don't think the entire audience
Yes,
has
have
it,
it.
but the committee
Correct.
has it. Correct.
Committee does, and we can definitely make copies of this. If you take a look at it, the accidents that are listed on these 3 pages are what we considered accidents on Vine Street. They run from 2nd Street or Highway 35 all the way to 9th Street. As you can tell from, and our records system goes back to 1999, there's approximately 51 accidents on Vine Street in that time period. If you take a look at some of the major intersections, obviously 3rd Street and 4th Street are going to have their set of accidents, and then the next biggest one obviously is 9th Street. And taking a look at the data from 2010 through 2015, we've had 10 accidents on that stretch of roadway. And I believe, if the data is correct here in the data entry, we've only had, in that time period from 1999 till present, we've only had 3 pedestrian accidents on that roadway.
Do you consider that to be pretty safe then, or?
Well,
On
considering
par,
some
or-
of the other intersections that we have accidents on, especially downtown, there's a lot of traffic down there. We have a lot of pedestrian accidents from time to time down there. We do have some pedestrian accidents up on the walkways coming out of like Target, Family Fresh, those type of streets. But on other residential streets, I have nothing else to compare them to because I didn't do any of the comparisons. But again, without having all the reports in front of me, I can't it could be that the pedestrian stepped in front of the car or somebody failed to yield at a crosswalk or something along those lines.
Did you guys run any speed data on Vine Street?
I have not done any speed data recently. I do have the recorder available to use it. The problem we run into is that because the weather is so cold, the battery would wear down, so we wouldn't get full week worth of data, for one. Number two, because of the snow that's been coming down, obviously that affects speeds on the road, so you wouldn't get an accurate reading of about how fast traffic is going either. So I've been waiting for a stretch of at least 5 days where I can put it out where the temperatures are going to be relatively warm enough, and that we'll have no impacting weather that would impact the speed on the roadway.
Okay,
That-
thank you.
I guess with that,
Can I ask a question? Is on the contract, what is codes? They have different codes, they have conditions.
okay,
different
could you go to the podium, I guess?
Yeah, if you're gonna,
If you're gonna.
can
are
we
gonna
just
open
wait
up
till the end?
questions? Okay.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Thanks, Pat. Appreciate it. Well, everyone will get a chance to ask their questions. What else you got, Tom?
Well, maybe just a couple closing comments. I know that there are some that are not happy with the 36-foot street section on the, relative to the width. Both sections do come out 36 feet. And again, what we're looking at is the function of that roadway with its traffic, what's gonna happen in the future with the traffic. There is commercial traffic on there, as you all know. It just, from a recommendation standpoint, we feel that's what's appropriate to match those conditions. One thing, again, the plans and specifications that are being prepared currently are the 9-foot, with the 9-foot parking lane. So again, that's what is being prepared. If council decides to go with the other route with that, we just need that direction to make that change, as well as, I assume the council would have to go through a procedure to ban parking if the council decides to go that route.
Okay,
So with that, I guess. we
all right, so we're looking at two, at the moment, we're currently looking at two options. One with parking, one without. Most of the discussion we've been having over the last year, in fact, since 2010, is that this street is, there's a section from 4th Street to 9th Street that's only 31 feet wide. The rest of the road is 36 feet wide. In addition to that, and down between the alley and 4th and 5th Street, the way the stormwater runs, this is not optimal for managing the huge flow that comes down due to some other development, so that there's a lot of flooding going on down in that neighborhood, in the alleys and around 5th Street, and this reconstruction will accommodate that stormwater flow as well. So there's a 100-year-old pipe in there, we've got old sewer in there, we've got old infrastructure. This road is approximately decades past what we'd consider a good reconstruct. So from our standpoint, and sitting here for many hours, a lot of hours, trying to figure out what would be an optimal situation, this is roughly what we've come up with. We've had ideas from doing a little bit to adding, a whole separate bike lane and turning this into a 40-foot wide thoroughfare. We've kind of opted for not being quite so invasive, but to try to keep the current flavor of the neighborhood while still updating the road so it's of modern safety, and to rebuild our infrastructure. So that we have put a lot of thought into this. I know there's also some concerns. I've gotten many letters about assessments and things like that. We are currently not updating or changing the assessment policy to dive into get it in front of this project. We are just are currently taking a look at the assessment policy just to say we haven't looked at it since Denny. When was the last time we looked at it? It was like 97 or something like that. So that's for a long-term goal. This current project would be assessed just like any other project that's gone on in the city for the past 25, 30, 40 years. So those rules are not going to change for this project. And so they don't, we may never change the assessment rules either. So I guess I've heard some of the feedback, and that had nothing to do with the decision about creating a decent road that's going to accommodate now anywhere from 6,000 cars to roughly 9,000 to 10,000 in the next 15 years. I mean, the way Hudson is growing, it's kind of going to continue to be a rather busy street. So I guess with that, how many people have something to say here tonight? Just a couple? Okay, 3, 4, all right. Well, let's get started. We'd love to hear your comments. So if you come up to the podium, state your name and your address, and we'll hear what you have to say.
Doug Wetstein, 719 Vine Street. First of all, I guess I was under the impression with the meeting a couple of weeks ago that it wasn't just informational, you were actually seeking some sort of input. There was some transparency, but it appears as if the decision was already made some time ago. And you have these two options, but the width decision was already a done deal. But that said, I'm all for the resurfacing, the utility work. We live there, we hear the ruts, you know, the cars going over the cracks and things. That's a given. Traffic volumes, we live with it. Police, fire, running up and down, high school traffic, YMCA traffic. It's a fact of life if you live on Vine Street. The road needs to be reworked. But I would like the width left as is for a number of reasons. And I'm all for no parking on either side. Right now, if you have parking, it's hard to cross. I try to cross Vine at all hours of the day, and if you have parking, you don't have sight lines. Those cars, they're not doing 25 miles per hour, most of them. It's dangerous to cross, and I do it every day. And it's hard for pedestrians. I hear the brakes squealing. Those things don't show up in the count, but there's a lot of near misses. The other thing is, you're adding a lot of cost by widening it from 4th to 9th. You got to deal with the trees, you have to move the power poles. That narrowing actually slows people down. You widen it, they're just going to go faster. I mean, that's just natural. It's a wider street, it's nice and smooth. They come down off that nice street hill. It's only going to be quicker. The other thing is you're adding about 6,000 to 7,000 square feet of impervious surface. The city of Hudson is already under an MS4 stormwater permit to reduce the amount of stormwater runoff, the load to the St. Croix River. By widening this street, adding more impervious surface area, you already make a reduction that you need to make even worse. And lastly, as far as bicycles, the report that was on your website even says, this street's not the right street. You should be using other less trafficked streets for bike routes. And the last thing I'd like to get cleared up is you dropped something about detouring traffic off of I-94. It was real confusing because you said it was coming down Vine. I'd like that cleared up. And for how long is that going to happen? And if you build a brand new street, you're putting all that interstate traffic onto Vine Street for some period of time. I don't know what that'll do to it, but unless you're building it stronger than most, the house shakes when those semis go by. That's it.
Do we want to hit any responses, or if you want to wait? Well, in particular about the detour.
Well, I can either speak or not speak.
What would you prefer? Is it easier just to kind of?
I can address it now.
Yeah, well, the.
I'll address it.
Okay, go ahead,
Okay,
Tom.
first of all, we are not designing the project. The project is being designed by the DOT. I didn't want to get into specifics of that project because, first of all, I do not know the specifics. We've had, I believe, 2 meetings with DOT representatives. The project is out on 2017 construction. They are not closing down I-94 and sending 80 to 90,000 vehicles a day through Hudson. That has been reported. That is totally false, from what I'm being told. They are building bridges and they're doing improvements on I-94. The ramp that currently is southbound through downtown to eastbound I-94 is going to be worked on. Likewise, the ramp westbound that goes northbound through downtown is going to be worked on. While those two ramps are being worked on, there's going to be detours. The preliminary plan that the DOT has is to use Vine Street and Carmichael. And where they're coming from is westbound traffic that would go downtown to Holton. That ramp will be closed for a period of time. They want to get that traffic off on Carmichael. We have two options. We can detour them from Carmichael to Vine and then down, or we could put them on Cooley. The engineers from the DOT and their consultant both recommend it is not a good idea to take traffic off westbound I-94 onto Carmichael and immediately put them in a left turn to go down Cooley. There's already some issues up there with signalization and multiple signals in a row. And I've seen, just from driving, there's a lot of people that come off that ramp and they're going to Target and they shoot right from that ramp all the way across to Target, across two lanes and a third lane. So it isn't a done deal. If the city so chooses, I believe they probably could have that detour route. Then you have trucks as well going through there, and again, the DOT and their consultants think that's a bad idea. The ramp, getting back to downtown, any southbound traffic through downtown that is going to Minnesota, that is going to be open 100% of the time and is not being closed at all. What they have told me is, again, that same traffic movement south through downtown, when you're down south of the treatment plant, 75% plus or minus of that traffic goes to Minnesota. 25% goes eastbound 94. So that 25% is another detour route so they have to go, somehow they got to get up to Carmichael. So we could have that come down to Cooley and up, but again, you still have that traffic across the commercial entities, truck traffic. And again, I'm not sure, I guess I should probably have the answer to this, but I don't know if the city just says no to the DOT, what happens? I don't have an answer for that right now. But the other thing we could sign, this is coming from the consultant, we could sign either or both. In other words, we could have a detour on Vine, we could have another detour on Cooley, and we could let people use both. From a practical standpoint, if we set up this is again coming from the consultant and the DOT, if you set up the detour on Vine Street, most of the local traffic, the people that live here and use the downtown area, are going to find their own route and they're going to use Cooley anyway. So anyway, again, we did not design that project. We didn't do the timing on it. We're just, and I hope that kind of helps a little bit from some of the information that's been out there.
So how long was that? You said there was a period of time that was gonna, so they're closing the northbound ramp
One of
coming
those
off of
ramps is
94 west.
Yeah, one of them is about a 7-month process, so it's most of the construction season for sure, they've told me. The other one is a 2-month process, plus or minus. Again,
So it's a-
don't shoot the messenger. We have not designed that project. We have not put the final plans and specifications together. So.
And I'm Diane
that's what I know.
Wetstein, 719 Vine Street. Thank you, Tom. It's just at the last meeting, it sounded like the traffic was going to come from mile marker 4, off the interstate, down UU, down Vine Street. So you're telling us all the semis, I mean, that's not the case.
Well, it's funny you should ask, because I had that conversation today with somebody. Because I asked, what if the city says, no, we don't want this detour? And I don't know if they're quoting state statutes, but apparently the DOT can use their highways, and I took that to mean they could use, if we said totally, you are not gonna use either one of those alignments, then I suppose they would jump back to exit 4 and use, US 12 or some of the old things like that. But They really thought that was a bad idea, because then you're out at exit 4, and then you're gonna have people coming from that location down Vine anyway. So
So we'll have some options.
we can probably do a little, well, we obviously will have a little bit more communication with the DOT, but their concept of trying to get a detour and bring them off the Carmichael Road ramp and immediately into a left turn to go in front of Target, and at first glance, I think that's problematic. That would, and I would tend to concur, but we can have some more discussions with them.
I concur with that, too. It's hard to move over. It's just that we thought the interstate was being closed, like they were taking out, like, 11th Street Bridge or something, and they were going to take all that summer traffic that's on the interstate down Vine Street.
They are doing work all the way up to the Mike Symes gas station, but widening lanes and switching lanes.
But
And
that,
in fact,
but
part of
that-
their.
they should be open out there, at least one lane, right? So that, we're just kind of talking, like the paper made it sound like traffic coming down from Holton or Hudson, you know, would, instead of going down to, by the treatment plant to get on, they would just go up Vine, and, because that's kind of our normal traffic, like
Yeah.
going to the high school, going to the, of our, you know, but the interstate completely being on Vine Street was what we thought at the end of the last meeting.
They would actually reroute over to the other side of the highway before they did that.
Okay,
I'm
and
pretty
that's
sure.
what we wanted, no, not on our, not on Vine Street, not after this
I'm sure that's a
reconstruct.
no that the city would definitely
Okay,
win.
all right,
Right,
okay,
yeah, no.
just wanted to clarify that, thank you.
John, if I could just say one thing.
Yeah.
Once the truck traffic, the semi-trucks, you had some concerns about semi-trucks coming down Vine Street. I think they're gonna have a difficult time when they get to Second and Vine, if they are gonna go northbound, to make that right turn. I think that the truckers that use that frequently are gonna probably opt to find other options, maybe at exit 4, because they're not gonna wanna come down and make that sharp turn, and it's just very difficult with traffic, and they can't hardly with the amount of traffic that's already, you know, on Second and Vine. So that's something that, you know, might deter the big trucks, just that right turn to go northbound.
Yeah, so part of the timing that we had been struggling with originally was, do you wait till 2018 or beyond and wait until after this project? However, DOT was already talking about rebuilding Second Street, part of Second Street in 2019. So we're like, wait, this seems like a pretty good opportunity to get out ahead of all this and then not be in the middle of a construction project while everything else is kind of flowing through Hudson. So that it seemed like not only a better opportunity, but you know, they can end up having delays. So I don't know, was what we thought made sense, if that makes sense. Anybody else want to get up and?
My name is Lauren Faust. I'm 711 Vine Street. Back to the widening of the street. So if you're going to widen it to 36 feet, will we be losing sidewalk? Because the last meeting you said, for the most part, you were not going to move sidewalks. But if you widen it, does that mean we lose boulevard? And if that's the case, how narrow are our boulevards going to be with this widening? Because I'm in the portion on the north side of the street, and our homes are really close to the street as it is. I mean, if you move those sidewalks, I can't even imagine, especially Wetsteins, they're closer than we are. To me, that just makes no sense at all. We've got these fragile sandstone, limestone basements. And as they said, when these trucks go by or cars go by at this rate of traffic, buses, snow plows, I cannot tell you the times I have to fix my pictures on my walls because it just shakes, because they go so fast, they're so heavy. And then you move that traffic closer to our homes, and, you know, not everybody has a love of old homes. We do, and these homes are 100 years plus, and they cannot be replaced. And then who pays for these cracked foundations and these cracked plaster walls when you're done with this? And we've got this traffic, you know, 4 to 5 feet closer to our homes. You know, whose responsibility is that? I mean, I understand it's got to be for the greater good of the community. I get that. But it's a unique street. It's like 3rd Street. You know, it's just a unique situation. When these homes were built, they never foresaw this kind of traffic. And I just plead with you to take that under advisement. So those are my questions, you know. On the other side, how much closer to our homes? Do we lose, are the sidewalks moved? Do we lose boulevard space? And again, I would refer to this document too that was on the city website as far as the bike trail. Bicycle traffic should be routed to a lower volume street. It says that. And then back to the speeding. Also in this document, it says this professional, this man with the 45 years of experience, the environment of the street tends to keep motorists close to 25 miles per hour. You widen that street and guess what? That goes just right out the door because that's a raceway, especially when you've got brand new pavement. I mean, you see it on Wisconsin Street now, you know, because it's this beautiful road with the bike path and stuff. I mean, people move. And you know, with the Officer Jensen, you know, Chief Jensen, I don't know how often Vine is patrolled. I don't know how they police it. I know you guys are strapped and, you know, we're a much larger community now and it needs to be patrolled, but I rarely see police officers sitting there watching cars go by. I would welcome anybody to come and sit in my home. I will serve you tea, coffee, crumpets as you watch what goes on Vine Street, because this is not an accurate picture. This is a man who says, here's your population, here's a main thoroughfare, this is what happens. And it's not, you're not really seeing the true picture. So just please consider my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to talk about curb and gutter?
Well, yeah, I think I wrote down 3 things to maybe get back. First of all, on the sidewalks, the original inspections that were done last summer, again, the intent is to leave majority of that sidewalk in place. So it'll be selective removal and replacement based on the need. That was one item I saw. Traffic closer. The traffic shouldn't really be any closer to your house than what the traffic is out there now. Again, we still are talking 2 lanes, so the traffic isn't being moved over. Relative to the width, and I know, where I think, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, relative to the width and the boulevard, we're talking maybe a 2-foot differential. Now, if you see the section we're showing, I think we're showing a 10-foot boulevard, Steve. Now, that isn't exactly 10 feet in all areas because there are some areas where that sidewalk is right on the property line, and there's a couple areas where I think it's a foot off. Steve, maybe you want to jump in there? And
just to answer, is the traffic getting closer to your house? The center line really isn't moving. So under this scenario where we have the 2 4-foot lanes, the center line will get put back pretty much where it is. If we go the other option with the 9-foot parking lane, the center line would actually move to the south. Because we'd have a traffic lane on the south side of the road instead of the 4 and 2. Because we'd have the parking lane on the north side of the road. So the center line would be, if you follow me there.
well, the south side's eastbound, where we're proposing 12 and the 2-foot reaction for 14.
12 and 2.
And I believe the existing on the eastbound is pretty close to that, I thought, if I have that here.
The proposed, Tom, for 36 feet with parking on the north side, we have to move the center line towards the south, as the board
Yeah.
shows.
I thought it was 13 feet is what was out there existing, and so it'd be a foot difference, because we'd have the 14 feet shown.
Right now, that's how it functions, because if there's cars parked there, you have to go around them anyway.
Again, I'm talking eastbound on the south side of the road.
Right.
There's about 13 feet there, is my understanding, on
So,
that south
and-
eastbound
and-
lane.
Any sidewalks we take out, we're proposing to put them right back in where they are, so we're not moving the sidewalk.
The alignment stays the same.
The alignment stays the same.
Just you're replacing panels, but the alignment is gonna stay.
The alignment of the sidewalk stays exactly the same. The boulevard, to make up the 5 feet, we need to take 2.5 to 3 feet on one side or the other, or on both sides, to add up to 5 feet.
And are you committed to parking on? I mean, I know Pat once in a while parks up by 8th Street for her rental property, but, you know, on Booster Days, we have parking up and down for the parade and the activities down there, but seriously, there is, nobody parks on Vine Street on the north side between, gosh, I'm guessing 9th on down to 4th, maybe? I mean, we just don't. It's such a busy street. I mean, we park on 7th Street and somebody's vehicle is taken out because people cruise down 7th Street. I mean, nobody in their right mind really parks on Vine. It's just,
It's
even
too
if you
narrow.
widen it,
I
it's
mean-
too narrow. Even when you widen it, people go too fast. It's just not feasible. I schlep my groceries from the back of my property to the front versus parking out front because and we have parking on that side, 4 months out of the year. So, I mean, my suggestion is that you just eliminate that parking. That's just so dangerous. I mean, I just don't see the need for it.
Nobody uses it. I mean, it's just not, it's not going to be.
One thing that I've noticed in the summertime, when the parking is allowed from 9th to 4th Street, is, we don't have snowplows, of course, but we still have large trucks and we have the street sweepers. One of my big concerns is when there is a vehicle parked during the summer, in order to get around that parked vehicle, we have to cross the center line. I have concerns that if there was an accident, who's alive, actually we're directing a large vehicle around that parked car. So I agree that either there has to be no parking or the street has to be widened for safety reasons, at least on my end. I have to look out after our guys and of course, I don't want to have a street sweeper and swerving to go around a vehicle or have a car going around the vehicle and we're coming up the hill and someone gets hurt too. So I have safety concerns about that. Also, even our current standard street width is 32 feet. That's our current standard. So 31 feet is actually below the current standard of a residential street. And this is a thoroughfare collector street. So normally they're much wider. So just some thoughts.
Mary, or Jim, did you want to say something first?
My suspicion is that when we repave this and you have smooth asphalt, the vibration is gonna go down significantly. So until it gradually deteriorates over time, you will see a reduced vibration, and that'll be an advantage when all the additional traffic is detouring down there. I also question how much truck traffic really goes northbound if it's not semi-local. It's the occasional.
It's buses, right? Don't you have, it's a major bus route for the schools.
Yeah, buses.
And they're not very well suspended.
They're not-
Buses are
That's not an
bouncy.
addition. That's exactly the same as the way it is today.
Right.
That's no change. I'm thinking that what's the northbound traffic that's not gonna go through downtown, or come down Vine Street, how much of that is really truck traffic? How much,
I don't know.
I wonder if we have any count on that? Or we just have observations of vehicles?
I think it's probably, well, I don't know, hard to say. Probably not, so school buses, FedEx, UPS, probably more mid-sized vehicles, I'm guessing. Not so much semis. Semis kind of tend to
Garbage.
go down my street. I live on First Street, and that's also a speed zone. People go fast on First. We could put, in part of the project, we could put some of the, the speed signs where I know some people slow down because they see how they're going like 35 and a 25. We could add some of that into the mix, even with or without widening it. So there's things we could do to help get people to pay attention as they're going down. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Marion Weber, 604 Grandview Drive. We really live right off Vine Street, and I guess my observation here is there's a lot of input and a lot of things to be considered. And one of them is that this is a road that needs to serve Hudson into the future, however long that road lasts, or if it's not an appropriately sized road, you're going to be dealing with it later on. As far as if there are trucks on there, then obviously the road does need to be wider to facilitate the trucks. And the situation about the bicycle uses, it's just a simple thing that it's already being used by people to travel to downtown Hudson and to the schools and whatnot. And looking to the future, it would be really great if Hudson took all aspects of potential road construction into consideration when making decisions about how they move forward. There are a lot of things that can be done on a road that involve our sort of traffic calming things, and they don't all involve having structures that go out into the road. Simply having, if, in the case where you did facilitate bicycles on that road, a white line indicating a bike lane is a traffic calming tool. That's why the white line is there. And when people see it, they know, they pay attention. It catches their attention, it causes them to slow down naturally. Obviously, it is a road that's a main thoroughfare. It's heavily used. It's a commuter thoroughfare. It's a local thoroughfare. And there are issues about speed on that road. So maybe the speed issue and the way to get that is periodically having ticketing people. And then when it starts to be a problem again, do a week of ticketing again. I don't know. But I would just say that if bicycles are a part of that, and I would encourage that simple white line indicating a bike lane would be a traffic calming device.
If you look, it's already shown on that typical section.
Yeah, and I had a lot of conversation with transportation people about bicycling and designing streets for bicycling. And of course, the street isn't designed only for bicycling, but it's when you do put improve a street or build a new street to take into consideration, including the needs of people who are bicycling in the plan. And so I know that information about traffic calming devices and bicycling, I know they're readily available through the DOT. So,
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments, thoughts, ideas?
I'm Amy Stonestrom from 800 Vine Street, and my background is in landscape horticulture with a focus on sustainability. And my concern is that if we're having 6,000 to 7,000 square feet of impervious surfaces taken off, that's all going straight into the river, and there's going to be more runoff problems. I'm also worried about all the trees that are going to be taken down. It's just a historical neighborhood, and taking down the trees is just going to ruin the aesthetics of that, for one thing. And another thing is, it's hard to grow trees. Those trees have been there for, 70, 80 years, and it's just going to have a whole different feel to it. And I don't think there's any reason to take down these trees. Also, it's kind of the trend in city planning across the country to add green space to offset impervious surfaces. I haven't really heard of the opposite, where you're taking, especially when you're on a waterway like we are, to take away, sod and everything where the rain can soak in, instead of going straight down into the river. It just seems environmentally unsound practice.
Thank you.
You want to address some of the tree issues? We have talked about this issue with the Urban Forestry Committee. John and I are both on that committee. We have a letter that has been sent to the Public Works Committee from the Urban Forestry Chairman to address a lot of the tree issues, and the Urban Forestry Board is requesting that every tree that is removed be replaced with larger trees that will be a certain caliper. We're liking 3-inch caliper. The trees that are replaced, make sure that they're in the right location for sight lines, visibility, make sure that the right tree is in the right place. A lot of the trees that are larger. Some of them are on the south side that are underneath power lines and they look like slingshots. Some of those would need to be replaced. Some larger trees on the north side are ash trees that we would like to have removed anyway. They're gonna be, probably, with the emerald ash borer come down anyway. So we are, the Urban Forestry Committee would like to work very closely with the selection of trees, replacement of the trees, to make sure that we get tree diversity and get the right tree in the right location. Also, the tree spacing is critical. A lot of the trees that we have currently are too small or too close. And the tree canopy, when the trees are developed, the canopy gets too close. So the urban forestry would really like to work closely with the construction and the design of this project.
Anybody else? Good.
Todd Stonestrom, 800 Vine Street. Last time we met, there was some discussion, obviously, around stop signs as being one, and I think some of the feedback we received through the paper was that that probably is not an option that the city's looking at. The other option we talked about was potentially at major spots like 4th, 7th, 9th, for example, where you've got, kids crossing to go to schools, or, major intersections where there's a lot of traffic going north, south, south, north, to have a bump out type concept. I don't know the technical term, where the curb comes out, potentially to get that pedestrian still on ground, but visible to the cars that are coming up and down Vine Street, okay? Any discussion that's occurred since that meeting, I guess I'd like to understand the feedback on that option. I think that's something that definitely we discussed a couple of weeks ago. So that's one item. The other item, has there been any, we've got a lot of statistics on what goes up and down Vine Street today. I think 8,000 to 10,000 vehicles or whatever it was said.
6 actually was the number
6.
currently, yeah.
And I think that was roughly about half of what we believe goes up and down Main Street, or maybe Main Street's 2 times that. I think I saw.
We're over 15,000, aren't we, Denny, or 18,000, or? Okay.
14, so a little more than 50%, or double. As far as this DOT reroute, has there been any study related to the increased traffic that's going to come down Vine as part of the detour for 7 months, which is going to go by our high school, right down Vine Street? As part of the detour traffic, has there been a study on the increased
I don't believe there's
traffic
been
volume?
any opportunity to do that, because I think we just kind of found out that which lanes they were closing, or it's actually an exit that is going to be closed to cause the disruption going north on 35. So I think what we need to do, and we will do, is to take a harder look at where traffic is going to go. Be nice to limit truck traffic to Cooley, or maybe some sort of split route that, but, we just found out today, I guess, so that we will certainly do the best we can to kind of minimize what goes down Vine Street.
I mean, I agree with Tom that probably most local truck traffic already knows to avoid 2nd Street and Vine. But that's probably not the traffic volume that's going to increase on that street. It's going to be whoever we're detouring off the freeway, or whoever's going on the freeway. The unknown truck driver who isn't familiar with Hudson, okay? So those are the people that are going to follow the signs, follow the detours. So, 2 main areas. One is the ability to, comment on the curb increase to make more visible cross avenues for pedestrians. 4th, 7th, 9th seems logical. I think they either employ or they have a volunteer that sits on 4th today with the stop sign and walks out to stop traffic to allow kids to cross. So, that's one thing I'd like to hear some feedback on, because that's something we brought up. I know the other piece around what the increased volumes would be is probably something you need to research, that you can come back to us, but ultimately on the curb piece, what kind of research you've done on that, because I don't see any. Obviously, it's probably only a couple blocks of street that's on this poster, but I don't see anything like that on either option. Thanks.
Well, off the top of my head, that scenario doesn't really work with the bike lane situation. It works with the parking situation. Where you could have.
Not really.
Well, yeah, actually,
Bump outs?
yeah.
Well,
Because you'd have the bump outs on the north side of the street where the parking is, so there's a bump out, not on the south side, but the bump out would come on the north side, then you have parking, and then a bump out, and my daughter lives in Atlanta, I just drove, her neighborhood is built exactly like that, so you could, it's kind of cool, actually. But that would only, to me, it would only work with the parking scenario.
We kind of discussed the bump out thing, with the section that shows the car parked. If you look at the south lane or which is the eastbound lane, you basically have that car eastbound is 12 feet. So you do not have an opportunity to do any bump outs on the south side. If you go to the north side where the parking is and then put in bump outs, the concern is that traffic heading west by the bump out is gonna veer a little bit more to the left and possibly cross the center line when we only have the one lane coming back eastbound. That kind of, I touched on a few of these things with Glenn Van Warmer. So his recommendation was that, again, based on that eastbound lane coming, you don't want to have people crossing the center line. Again, it's related to safety. And I think I concur with the bike path. If we have bike paths, it's hard to bring them in and out of the line.
Joe, there's no modified bump out that can accommodate right turns very well, like you stagger it down the block a little. But then how does it work for the pedestrian, right? I see what you're saying. You'd almost have to move the intersection down to, okay.
So if we didn't do any bump outs, Steve, I mean, could we at least consider having some flashing pedestrian lights, these solar panels? One thing that I have concerns with when we have a constant flashing light is it gets redundant and people just get too acclimated to that flashing light. What I would think, we should consider is these possible, the push button activators
Yeah.
that would be on these lights. So when a pedestrian comes to an intersection, that it activates the lights at that time. Just something to consider. I know 4th Street would be, I think, a great opportunity to have these. I think you can get solar powered lights now and LED lights that might help with the situation some if these bump outs weren't warranted.
Mr. Chair, I've been told that the constant flashing lights, people just get used to them rather quickly and they start to ignore them. The activated lights do work better.
Okay. Somebody said 4th, 7th, and 9th Street. Who said that one? That's, okay.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Steve, has there been, I guess, would you know, is there any advantage in slowing people down and in safety for pedestrians in the pavement change? Where you have your crosswalks a brick or something along that line?
I'm not aware of
I mean,
that.
I'm just wondering if that slows people down because they see the pavement change different, they know something's there. Kind of what we have, where is it going into Red Cedar? Right on Vine where it's that brick.
I'm not saying
Stop sign there, but
doesn't bring better attention to the crosswalk, but I'm not aware of anything that's written down. The white fog line, delineating the lanes really helps to slow people down, and then crosswalks would help too, if we paint the crosswalks, and that's easy to do.
Okay.
So,
Like solid or just
The bigger blocks.
bigger lines or?
Let me throw one other thing too, again, because I had this discussion with the traffic engineer. Signs, crosswalks should meet some kind of warrants, and I know I'm not trying to sound cruel. It gets back to, we could go out there and put crosswalks at 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th, but if they're not warranted, what you're gonna get is drivers are gonna get so used to blowing by these crosswalks that the one place where there is a need for a crosswalk could become not a safe situation.
I've seen the activated ones.
There's not just one need for
Right.
I didn't catch that, sorry.
She said there's not just one need for the crosswalk, meaning that it's good, it's pedestrians, but also bicyclists and people with strollers and, is that what you're talking about, Ken?
He made it sound like there's only one place that's really important to have a
No, that's not what I said.
I think what he said is that it becomes redundant without extra marking, is what I'm hearing, that, and just anecdotally, I've seen in more than one city, where the kids push the button and you get the flashing LEDs, very powerful, traffic stops, it does stop, and kids cross and away they go, and the flags are kind of nice, but those flashing things really, because it's situational, it makes a difference when people are crossing, so.
Wisconsin Dells actually has them in the pavement.
Do they really?
Mhm. They're really neat.
Oh, cool.
You see them.
So in the pavement
And I mean, you know the
marking,
traffic Wisconsin Dells gets.
it's crazy, yeah.
Oh, and then people stop.
How's that work with snowplows?
I don't know, they gotta be kind of buried, but.
Yeah, like
you know,
embedded
Kind of like the
or
reflector.
Recessed.
Kind of like the reflectors that you see on the interstates, where you can plow right over them, but
recessed.
they do work.
Hi.
Hi.
Marion Weber again, 604 Grandview Drive. I just wanted to bring up, since you're talking about crosswalks and bump outs and stuff, that to think about disabilities, because that's something that we get approached about is Hudson improving the current crosswalks and curbs so that they're accessible.
Handicap accessible, that's our design standard now, though, isn't it? Handicap
They
accessible?
have to be ADA compliant.
ADA compliant, okay.
We would have programs.
If you look around the city, there's a variety of designs for those, and then some of them are not good, because they put you out into the street. It's like a compromise between this, so we go this way, so you have to walk, you're actually aiming out into the traffic as opposed to crossing. So,
Okay.
Yeah, any new standards wouldn't be,
Yeah.
right on the nose of the intersection, no.
Is there any more public comment? If not, I think okay, go ahead, we're good.
Hi, thank you for your time. I'm Michelle Hanson at 716 Vine Street. My question, I'm fairly new to Hudson, about 4 years, and we've been through other projects like this when we lived in Red Wing. And my biggest concern, looking at all of the things that we have to consider here, is this is a very costly expense to the city, and I understand there's many people that will benefit from it. But I'm looking at specifically widening the road and the benefits. From what I hear, I'm still not getting a really clear picture as to why it is mandatory. I understand if you were to park, that it would create a little more space. And at this point, from all the time that I've lived there, seeing the speeding and the traffic and everything going, I really don't even understand why we would even consider keeping parking. It's just totally unsafe. The nearby accidents I've seen, I'm out in the front yard a lot. It just amazes me we'd even consider putting a bike lane. There are so many other safer routes going up, even coming down 7th Street or up on Wisconsin, that you can reroute a bike. I'd hate to feel responsible seeing young children riding their bikes down Vine Street when you're anticipating for sure that the traffic is going to get heavier and worse, and we're going to now put cyclists on when we barely have enough room with one side parking. My thought would be no parking at all and reroute the traffic. And ideally, when the traffic comes down to downtown from the high school area, you immediately pick up speed going down 9th Street, because that's what you do. I mean, that's just normal thing that you do. But I have to say, as soon as that road gets narrower and you do notice it, you do start to slower. You notice that all of a sudden you're getting closer to downtown. And wouldn't you want people to be getting slower going to downtown where there's going to be more commercial area and more congestion? I don't understand. When I look at this whole picture, what percentage of the cost is being taken to widen it from 31 to 36 feet? I'm not getting a clear picture. I mean, obviously, it's aesthetics, or perhaps there's going to be more traffic, we want more space, but is that really warranting the cost to do that, to move the trees, to make the boulevard smaller and put new trees on these tiny 2 to 3 feet areas? I mean, I can't imagine these trees will be really, really blossoming in such a little bit of an area. I just see cars coming down that street all the much faster. And so I guess my question, to be more clear, is what is it going to cost for that 5-block area, or however long it is, to make it from 31 to 36? And does it warrant the runoff that's coming out? Has adequate monies been set aside to save for the containment basin needed for all that runoff to keep the phosphates from going into the river? I mean, we're talking about a lot of money just to widen the road, and I still don't really hear why this is so incredibly essential. Thank you.
Well, I've thought about this project forever. I've been on city council now for 5.5 years, and I drive up and down Vine Street every day, 5-6 times a day. And I could see the point of not widening it, et cetera. But it all comes back down to road science. Narrower is not safer. It's statistically proven to be the case. Because as they point out, you're in your reaction time and your reaction lane. It's not there on the 31 feet. Nobody parks there because you wouldn't catch me dead parking my car there because it's going to get hit by something else. At least that's how I feel anyway. So nobody parks at the 31, at least in my opinion, because it's too narrow. Number two, this road was not built to be what it is today, and that's not your fault or our fault. That was kind of just back in the day. It wasn't built properly to begin with. Also, we're not going to get another crack at this road for a very long time, so why would we design it to a substandard road when we already have the opportunity to put it into a position of being what it is? It's a minor arterial. I think, and that's kind of the conversation I have, and that's my opinion. I know these guys are going to get a chance to have some more conversation out here, and Tom, you can respond to the budget if you want to at this point on cost.
Well,
If you want to stand up and comment, that's fine.
Okay, my name is Pat Colton, and I own the property at 804 Vine Street. And so I had several things that I wanted to talk about. One is, I agree that, that street was too narrow. It's ridiculous to put it back in a too narrow situation. That road was built, well, my house was built in 1857, so, yes, it didn't anticipate the traffic we have today. It was horse and buggy back then, so it definitely needs to be updated. And we're not talking about a real long street that we're widening. We're talking about a very narrow, few block area, that needs to be widened, and they keep saying, we don't understand why. Well, that's the fire truck route. That's the bus route. That's, the only road that goes through town, that cuts through town. It also is the road that brings all the kids to school, the high school. It's the road that takes the kids to middle school. It's the road that goes to the YMCA. It's the road that goes to our government center, for St. Croix County. So that road is really a major, major road. It's not just a regular city street like the rest of the streets are. That's, like, I consider the freeway to be the freeway, and this is like kind of the highway that goes through town. And so it should be done right, and the problem, a lot of the problem with the street, I know, is not just what you can see on the surface, it's what's under there. It's pipes that are only 4 inches wide, that were laid out back in 1857 or whenever these storm, sewers, it was a dirt street then. It wasn't anticipated to have all the concrete and all the other kind of things that are, taking up and putting more water into the storm system. And I'm sure that there's other problems underneath the road with being hollowed out. I mean, it's hollow underneath my house at where I live at 405 Locust. It's hollow underneath there, and so like I say, this is our one chance to do it right. We should want a road that's gonna be, for everybody in this town, safe, you know, and the people that are kind of a group of people that are kind of clustered in a small area here, they don't care if there's parking on the street, because they all have garages and, you know, parking in the back of their houses where they park. You know, for them, it's not, what I hear is always, well, I don't care. You know, if they're talking we, it's just a little tiny bit of we, this little clump of people. They're not talking we, the community. You know, we should be talking we, the community, when we talk we. It's not I, it's a we. You know, and it should be for the future, that we, you know, want to have a good road laid out. And when they're saying, well, the street's unsafe, again, you hit it right there, John, when you said what makes that street unsafe is it being narrow. Being wider would make it safer. And how does it make it unsafe? It's because on one side you've got the traffic, like if you're standing there to go across the street, the traffic comes right next to the curb because that's where the width is. We need to have that extra area so that if someone does step off the street or into the street or trips and falls into the street, they're not like, here comes a car. You know, and they're saying, again, absolutely no reason we need parking. Well, yes, we do. Again, why do we need it? Well, it's a route for the ambulances, the fire trucks, the school buses. You know, where are the UPS drivers supposed to park when they deliver their packages? You know, where's the mail truck when they bring in packages? You know, there's lots of deliveries, and more and more people are ordering things online, and there's deliveries. Those trucks need to, right now, they just got to stop in the middle of the road and put their flasher on and go up and deliver some. Well, then, here comes a fire truck or an ambulance. Do we want a truck blocking the road? Well, we should care again about what's good for the whole community. Having a parking place to park on that road on one side that gives enough width for the door to open like a normal street so it's not dangerous, that would be a very good thing, you know, and to have it so that we could use it all year round rather than, you know, obviously right now we can't use it in the winter because it's so narrow. If the street was the right size, it could be parking on one street all year round, you know, and the idea that taking some of the boulevard is going to make this undesirable or make it lessen this historic area. Well, this Vine Street isn't the only historic area. It's not like this is the best in this town. There are historic houses all over that whole area, the whole downtown Hudson area, and no one's house is more important than somebody else's. You know, it doesn't matter the size or, you know, they're all important. And, you know, to say, well, the bike rules say try to find on a less used street. Well, you know, that's great if there is another less used street that goes through, I mean, if there is a different way through town, but there isn't. You know, that's the only street that goes all the way through town. And once you get on the other side of 9th Street, you know, you don't go very far, and then that bike trail goes down into the woods. And I just think that would be, you know, you've got the bike path kind of along the river, you know, whether you could divert it till you get over to like 4th Street, you know, for just going through that little tiny bit of downtown, but then if you connect it up, so you could go from 4th, you know, up to 9th and then get on there, you know, we should want to encourage the kids to ride their bike to school rather than everybody's got to, you know, have a car in the parking lot up there at school and everybody's got to drive. I mean, it would, you know, hopefully as people are realizing this global warming is a huge issue, you know, we want to reduce cars on the road. That should be the objective of the whole city and of all the citizens too. We should want to reduce how many cars are on there, and we can do it if people can have a way to bike, you know, and also people going to work. You know, there are people that ride their bikes, you know, and it would be nice for people that are up on Carmichael to be able to come down to downtown instead of having to use up the little bit of available parking we have down there. If we could take some of that parking, make it bicycles. So many more bicycles could park in what takes up the, you know, space of a car, plus good for the environment, you know, and it's not just the phosphate coming off the yards and the fertilizer, it's the fuel crap that goes on the roads, that oil slick and stuff, you know, so the less traffic that drives would be so much better and healthier for the town in general, you know, to have that. And so then, you know, then we're getting to that bike trail, and it's just like I think, like, why not put the bike path on the boulevard? We've got 2 wider than normal boulevards. You know, even after we cut them back, they're still wider than they are in most other part of the
Now we're
town.
really widening the road.
What's that?
I said, now we're really gonna widen the
No,
road
we're
on
not gonna
that.
widen the road. I'm talking about putting the
Oh,
bike path.
on the actual
On the
boulevard.
actual boulevard.
Oh, I
Don't
see.
make it in the street. Well, why don't we have, because, well, about the snow, well, the boulevards are a lot wider on Vine Street than they are, even if you take off a couple more feet, than they are in most of the rest of the town, all over the place. There's no reason why, we can't have a bike, even if you made a narrower path next to the sidewalk on either side. That would make sense, because it's just like I say, from 4th Street to 9th Street, that's only 5 blocks, but it would be able to connect up, the town.
Okay.
And we want to look for the future, and so that's the other thing. Then also about the power lines.
You about ready to wrap it up, or?
Well, there is the issue here with the power lines is the fact that in my block, where I am from, like 809th Street, we've got that old wall that's been there since 1850s. Fire trucks can't get in. The fire truck cannot fight a fire from the front of my house. It can't fight for my neighbors either. And what is it that's blocked? It's the power lines. The power lines should not be able to block my being able to have fire protection for my house.
Are they that low there?
Yeah, they are. And the fire truck, my next door neighbor, he can actually reach up and touch his power line going through his yard. It's so low. But, the fire department has told me that they can't because of the wall and the power lines. It's 2 obstacles. And, it's dangerous for them to get their metal equipment, and if they hit a power line, boom. But now we're having an opportunity to do something about those power lines because the street's going to be open. They said there's directional drilling going for the gas or whatever they're putting, where were you talking about it last time? If it's going to be going through there, that at least in that area where we don't have fire protection, that would be something that I think Excel should do. But also, the big thing is, there's nothing on here that was brought up about that river water getting dumped right into the river, and that was brought up. And if there's a mandate that says that the city shouldn't be any new sewer project, you can't just directly dump sewer water into the river. That's, something important that should be addressed. And it's like, at the time, it's the water's been getting dumped in the river for a long time, but that was when they did that. People didn't know how damaging, that water with all
Sure.
the chemicals. They didn't know, but now we do know, and we should want to do the right thing, and
Okay.
it also, they talk about the population too. I looked, and the population has increased in the last, and according to your city web page, it says that since 2000 till now, it's increased by 50% in Hudson, so it's a lot more population. So again, another reason why we want to encourage people to use their bikes
Yep.
if they can. And then, of course, the big thing is about the cost of it. This is like a highway going through. It's not like a regular city street. And I just feel it's really wrong that the homeowners on Vine Street should have to pay for that road. I mean, this is something that should come out of, it's a road that's used by the whole
Are you
entire
ready
city.
to wrap it up? I don't mean to cut you short.
Yeah, but I'm
yeah.
just like, I mean,
Yeah.
that is a important issue.
Yeah, I know the
It shouldn't
assessment's
be-
going to get discussed. I don't know if it'll get discussed tonight or not, but
Okay,
we'll
but I
probably
mean,
leave that one
that's,
be.
something that is important too, because they just said tonight, it's gonna be assessed just like every other road. And I don't think that's right, because this is a road for the whole entire town, not just, the houses that live there. And it's not like it's a joy to have the house on, or to have a property on Vine Street. Okay, so, yeah, I guess that's, and also about the trees, when there are very few trees on the south, or whatever, the side that I'm on, there are very few nice trees along there anyway. There are few that Tom, you just put in a few years ago. Hopefully those could just get scooped up, but the rest of the trees are tiny, or just, not that good. They should go anyway. So, my thing is, let's do it right.
Okay.
And make it so it's nice for the whole community.
Thank you for all of your comments. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else? I think with that, we'll close public comment. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, you're right. We didn't respond to that yet. I gave him a couple minutes to crunch some numbers.
Oh, you on the cost?
Do you have a guess?
Well, I have a response, let's put it that way. If we looked at building a standard city street, it would, Tom mentioned, the residential minimum standard is 32 feet. So even in a residential area, it'd be that width. So if we went from 32 to 36 relative to additional cost, you're looking at 4 feet. And, yep, we could make a calculation, 4 feet times 5-inch thick asphalt, 4 feet times 8 inches of aggregate base, times that length. We could put a dollar amount on that, and I don't have my calculator, I didn't do it, sorry, John, but when I look at the entire project that we're gonna build, that's somewhere between $2.5 and $3 million construction cost, yes, it is additional cost for that 4 feet. Now, is it insignificant versus substantial? Again, and you've heard my recommendation is relative to the widths and the why. What?
That was 5 feet.
Okay, what I started from is the city standard is 32 foot. I would find it hard to believe that the city would build something less than the 32 foot anywhere in the city of Hudson. Developers are not allowed to do it, no one is allowed to do it. Smallest street we build is 32 foot, so that's my starting point to get. Even if we used 5 feet, we could use 5 feet times this thickness and come up with a price. When you balance what this road does, the heavy volumes of traffic, the fact that it is commercial, the fact that we are building something that's gonna be out there for a lot of years, to me, it justifies that additional cost for that 4 or 5 feet incremental width for 4 blocks, 3-4 blocks.
I think it's
If
5
somebody
total.
wants me to
5 blocks.
calculate that differential width, I can. But again, I think that the big picture is we're looking at a project that's gotta last a lot of years. We're expecting growth. The traffic counts are not gonna go down. To build something that is substandard, I guess I would not recommend.
Okay. Any other comments? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Avery Dahl, I live at 702 Vine Street. And first on the bike lane thing, I'm an avid cyclist. We don't use Vine Street. It's a suicide attempt. So that point is pretty much out for me there. I've been here 26 years now. I can count on one hand the time I've seen somebody park on Vine Street in front of my house. So the parking issue, I think, should be moot as well. My biggest concern is you talked about, and I'm all for resurfacing the street, widening, whatever it takes, but, you know, that's a short span of 5 blocks roughly. We're going to incur that cost, the homeowners on that part of the street. The new people coming into Hudson, that growth you're talking about, they're not gonna pay penny one for any of that use. It's all on us. And is there any way that can be deferred or lessened in some regard? Because that's gonna be a giant hit for all of us. We're not wealthy people. We're workers, just like everyone else. And to take that giant hit that it's going to be, it's gonna suck, plain and simple. And I just wanna know if there's any way that can be, you know, lessened or deferred or spread out or however, so that we don't have to just take that giant hit. That's all I have.
Okay, you want to talk about that, Tom, or?
This meeting wasn't set up tonight to talk about assessments or who pays what. The current assessment policy is everything between the curbs is 100% paid for by the city. So you, as an adjacent property owner, on one hand, are not going to pay one nickel towards it. However, that's not accurate. You will, just like everyone else, because part of the project is financed from the general fund. But the assessment policy has the city picking up everything between the curbs. So if it's 5 feet wider, 4 feet wider in between there, you will not see the difference on your individual assessment. Yes, it isn't free. It comes from the overall tax base. But you, as an adjacent property owner, won't see that 4-foot incremental difference.
Where assessment costs come in is curb and gutter and driveway, and usually that's pretty nominal.
I'm sorry, Lauren Powell, 711 Vine Street. So you're saying between the curbs, but we will be assessed for curb and gutter?
The current policy is 50% of the curb and gutter is assessed.
Okay. And back to what Avery said, you know, I can't count on both hands and both my feet how many times tonight it was mentioned that Vine is a major thoroughfare. I agree with Avery. We shouldn't have to take that burden. We don't use Vine Street. We use it as a cross street. We stay off of Vine Street. I think that we shouldn't even be assessed curb and gutter because it is not our street. It is the community street. It's a major thoroughfare, and it's still listed as a truck route.
Thank you. Anybody else? You only get to come back twice.
Yeah, my second time. Diane Wettstein, 719 Vine Street. And again, just so Pat Colton was talking like we're against this. We're not against, you know, the repairs to the street. But as the homeowners, especially when we're seeing in the Hudson paper about the special assessments and that type of thing, and of course we're concerned about if it's going to be wider, do we have to pay more, you know, that kind of thing. But again, Tom just mentioned now the heavy volume on the street, the commercial traffic on the street. We're expecting growth. The traffic counts go up. We don't benefit from the street of our residents like somebody, like when I wrote my letter on Northridge Drive, cul-de-sac. Literally, the only people who use that are the residents. The whole community uses Vine Street. And so again, we do just, you know, like Lauren said, we shouldn't even be assessed for curb and gutter on this street, and it's the DOT detour and, you know, that kind of thing. So we're not against the upgrades. It needs it, but again, that's our thing. And Pat even said that before she left. She actually proved our point of saying, you know, we shouldn't have to, you know, pay for this. We, you know, the whole community uses the street, and that's true. I think that's kind of our takeaway is just, you know, everybody's property taxes should pay for this project, as I would advocate for 11th Street, for example, too, north-south. Look how many people use that street, you know, so I think that's how we feel. So thank you for all your work and your consideration.
Thank you. Well, what I've learned about assessments, which still doesn't add up to a ton, is that the law will only allow us to be assessed no more than the perceived value of in front of your spot. And even our future potential assessment would only be a small percentage of the perceived value in front of your, so the cost won't even be dramatic. Asking for zero cost, certainly that would be an exception, because nobody else in the Hudson gets that break. Even the people up on Cooley, the businesses pay up there, and, you know, but I believe our current policy, it's certainly something we can talk about at council, and I guess we can take that under consideration. But at this point, if you look at all the policies that Tom has brought us, Hudson has a very low assessment rate in terms of other communities, so it's not going to be a huge hit, I don't think, for the people along that route. Would you agree or you don't agree? You're not going to comment? Good man.
Thank you.
All right.
Good evening. I'm Sharon Buffington, and I live at 708 Vine Street. And, you know, we're out in the front a lot. You know, our flowers are all over the place, and we really enjoy living in Hudson. And so we're concerned about the trees that are going to be coming out. The two that are in front of our house, for example, are trees that we put in. And so we're wondering, you know, when you want to take those trees out, you know, does somebody help us move them? And, you know, who pays for taking the trees down in front of everybody's house? Is that something that's assessed to the homeowner? And the movement of the utility poles, I'm assuming, is up to the utility itself to pay for the movement of those utility poles. But I'm just wondering about the trees and what's going to happen with those.
You want me to take that one, or you want to take it?
Well, the tree removal would be one of the line items in the project, so the project would take care of tree removal. We have been told by Excel that the moving of the power poles is going to be an Excel cost.
Okay.
We will be helping with the replacement of trees. Urban Forestry Board is going to at least be advisors to the project, and that also be part of the project. And we're not going to put in, you know, tiny little trees. We'll actually put in trees like that are what do we say, at least 3-inch caliper? Is that what you guys requested?
Well, that was requested by
That's a-
the Urban Forestry.
It's a pretty decent tree, so what we want to do is have the lowest impact possible on the nice impact of that.
Sure.
And some of those trees are ash trees that, emerald ash borer is now just right across the river, so this will actually be kind of a preemptive move on some of the trees that are going to have to be removed in the near future
But the
anyway.
homeowner that has a tree in front of their house that's on the boulevard, those trees are owned by the city?
That's right.
Okay, and so the city itself will pay for the removal of those trees?
Yeah.
And for those of us who purchase trees to put on the boulevard, is it up to us to move those trees?
No.
I mean, if we want to keep them, you know.
We'll figure it out. How's that? We'll work with you, and we were hoping that some trees could be moved carefully to even potentially in your yard or,
You guys have a shovel or something then?
We've got more than a shovel. We have 2 shovels. That's a good question, though. Any other? Okay, I think if you have something, you can send it an email or call us, or I think we'll close public comment. I'd like to hear from Tom and Jim going forward here. Is that okay? All right.
I'm here to listen. It's more important for me to listen. I'll digest it before I say anything.
Okay.
I've got a number of comments. The first one is that I'm a little disappointed in 4-foot bike lanes. There's a real lack of safety there. That's just about a minimum. And there are studies coming out now. A lot of traffic calming is being done. Sorry. I would actually like to see 5-foot bike lanes because that has more of a traffic calming effect. And there are a lot of studies that are out now where cities are going down to 11-foot lanes and 5-foot and then wider bike lanes, and that slows traffic down. So there's a good bit of statistic on that. It's a new concept, but there is information out there that supports that. There are a lot of other things, as I was listening, I said we need to do a lot of work on how are we going to mark these streets, and then how are we going to enforce the speed limits. Do we need to do more work on here? Do we need to put a flashing radar sign like up on the east end, up by the Y? That's really effective for me. It reminds me to slow down very, very, very well. And I think doing that halfway down the steeper hill there would be a way. It's really effective. It really slows a lot of people down. They say, whoops, it's a reminder, sorry, slow down. There are a lot of signs that can be used. We don't have, the signage is pretty minimal on there that's saying they're bikes or the pedestrians. I really like the idea of the flashing signs. Those are really effective. And you see them down to you. And they just, bam, they hit you right now. So you've got to do something. It needs to be part of the project cost. I think we have to look at that part and make sure we have those avenues covered very well. I don't know exactly what they all are, but we need to look at those. The pad crossing lines, and we probably need some good input on where those should be. I heard 4th, 7th, and 9th, but where those lights should be. For now, as we've been looking at this, talking about this, we've kicked around a lot of options, and I think this plan with the bike lanes is probably the best. Eliminate the parking, and the assessment policy is not going to change. Now, is there going to be a special case here? I've thought about it as an engineer. I said, well, okay, yeah, we could create a grid here. Number of cars, you only pay this much, and if you have 5,000 cars or 6,000 cars, you don't pay anything. But I said, no, that I don't want to be on that committee that designs that particular grid, because you're going to be you can't win that one. So, and I have strong feelings about assessments, but it's hard to grade those things. It's an all or nothing kind of thing, and that's about the fairest way we can get. Because otherwise, people say, well, you're favoring someone or you're not favoring someone. Just an argument we'll never win. But I think we need to, our work needs to be going into how are we going to make that street safe. You know, I support the 36-foot width. I think that's important. I know that some of the trees are gonna go out of there just from the utility work we have to do. We're gonna damage trees, and they will have to be removed. So that's almost, at some point, some of those are incidental. They will be gone, even if we didn't widen the streets. We're gonna lose trees. So that's, and I think someone made the point that this is gonna be the last shot we'll have at this thing for 20, 25 years. And we really need to do it as well as we possibly can at this point. And use all the modern technology, use all the modern work that's been done, the studies that have been done, and make this as good a street as we can. It is, other than Second Street, it's probably the major street in Hudson. So we got more work to do.
Always. Thank you. Tom, you still waiting? Still thinking?
Yeah, I really don't want to, I mean, I have a lot of things that I want to digest, but, you know, one of the concerns that people have brought up is about the increase in impermeable surface and how that's going to contribute to water runoff, and that's a concern. I'd like to see how that can be abated. I don't know how it can if we widen the street to 36, because it's just adding more of a asphalt. But that's something that we need to think about, if there's a way of addressing that issue, because I think it's a concern to a number of citizens, residents that have spoken today. Eliminating parking on the north side between 9th and, let's say, 4th is probably acceptable to most people. But if we eliminate it west of there, I think it might impact people who have businesses. So there's a balance there that I'm not sure we're going to be able to meet if we have a bike lane that goes all the way on the south side of the road from, I guess, 2nd Street up to 9th or wherever it goes. But on the north side, we'd have a bike lane that would have to stop at some point to accommodate parking on the north side, and that's an issue that needs to be kind of worked out, I think. I think the road needs to be 36 feet wide, and as I said, I really understand the concerns about the runoff, because that is something to be concerned about. As far as just thinking off the top, I think that having those, I live I cross 9th, and I cross Vine at 9th a lot, and it's very busy. And the way it's set up now, there's not good visuals as you look. If you're going north and you look to your left down the hill, if you're coming out in a car or if you're walking, it's hard to tell when cars are coming up. And that's something that needs to be addressed when this road is redone. But I'm thinking, right off the top, that 4th and 9th are the places to have some sort of a pedestrian crosswalk that attracts attention of drivers so that we can slow the speed down there. I don't know about 7th, if one needs to be there or not. I think there might be too many if it's every intersection. But those are just some of my preliminary thoughts, and everybody brought up really good points. They're all important points. I want to think more about some of those things too. Thanks for coming too.
Well, thanks for having this. I mean, we've been in kind of a worry in our section of the neighborhood, and we really appreciate you taking the time, and explaining things to us and working with us with our concerns, and we're glad you're taking these things into consideration.
There's always a lot of fear of the unknown and the uncertain, and try to address that.
Right. Kip, you have anything you want to add? Thoughts? Nope. Tom?
Nope.
Other Tom?
Oh, I got thoughts. Can we just address the stormwater runoff? I know a little bit, just a little bit. I know, Steve, I think you've already talked with the DNR and, as far as diverting the water south of the swimming beach. And I think that some of those concerns were preliminarily addressed through the DNR, Wisconsin DNR. The other thing I know I mentioned, or I think was brought up another time, some people like them, some people don't. But I guess I look at the possibility of having some rain gardens down on 4th and Vine Street areas. I know they can be very unattractive at times. I know designed properly, they can be very functional and still look nice. Just a thought, that, possibly the addition of rain gardens. I know, looking at the design, the road slopes from 3rd Street back to 4th, and then, of course, it comes down the hill from 4th. So I guess possibility that would be an option, having some rain gardens on 4th and Vine. But I know that you have spoken with the Wisconsin DNR as far as stormwater runoff.
Tom, Chairman, we have spoken to the Wisconsin DNR about increasing the width from 4th to 9th for that 5 feet. And they said that increase in square footage still makes this a minor reconstruction. I know the residents will disagree that this is minor reconstruction, but that's a classification. We're not doing a major reconstruction, adding, additional lanes or adding additional sidewalks or something like that. So it falls within their guidelines, and they've told us we won't need a different permit. Because we are still, the water all gets to the river. We are increasing for that 5 feet, but the rest of the water still gets there that we're taking there now. We're just gonna take it faster, so. And I think that's an important part, if we ask the people that live up the alley between 4th and 5th, they can't wait, to get rid of the water that's flooding their basements now and their garages, so.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Hey, Steve, a question. If this road is reconstructed the way we hope it's reconstructed and has a good surface on it, is that going to reduce noise and vibration for the people that live on the street?
If it's smoother, it will reduce the vibration and noise, like Councilmember Weber said. Yes.
Okay. And it wouldn't matter what the width is?
No, it doesn't really matter what the width is. It's the same, it's the traffic volume that generates the noise, so. Question that came up last time, you guys asked it about, we did survey up behind your house now, but I don't have the answer yet on what can be done there, but we're gonna look into it, so. A rain
go
garden
ahead.
is a depression in the boulevard. We'd open up the curb and take the back of the curb off and allow the first flash of the storm to fill the rainwater garden. It fills up and then it really doesn't take any more water after that. We try and get the first flash of the storm because that's when all the dirt usually comes down the hill. And they're gardens, and they have to be maintained just like any garden. If you don't, they'll turn into weed patches, and
They're a lot of maintenance.
they are a lot of maintenance. So we can look at doing some of those.
It's a mini storm pond.
The concept is
essentially-
infiltration.
Yeah, it percolates the water through the, so it would help with some of the runoff.
If I could just comment quickly. I did speak to the DNR as well. Something you have to keep in mind is, yes, this might be a minor modification. You don't have to take any specific additional precautions other than construction. Stormwater runoff has to be held back with barriers and things during construction. But the permit that Hudson's been issued has reductions that the city has to phase in over time. This increases that increment. So it just means that in the future, Hudson has more stormwater that it has to effectively deal with before that water can just be thrown back into the St. Croix River, whether it's infiltration or other means. It's not a blank check that you can just incrementally keep increasing. That's not how it works. You will have pounds of phosphorus you have to reduce. This makes that a little bit more, and that just has to keep getting factored in every time you increase your impervious surface area.
We are required by the DNR to report, model, and be in compliance with the MS4, which we're working on. We're investing in geographic information system technology to allow us to model our whole stormwater system, and we actually established our own stormwater utility, what was that, about 3 years ago now? So we have, are actually out in front of it, and I feel pretty good about that, because we're gonna be able to look at being able to accommodate, but yes, there are more developments going in, and we'll need more storm ponds, and we'll need to look at our total outflow to be able to comply with what's going in the river. So your point is valid, and we have been working on trying to make sure that this is not a blank check, that we will be maintaining our stormwater as best as possible. This area of town has a very challenging issues. The water doesn't just run on the roads, it runs down the hills and across people's yards, and it makes it an unfortunate kind of a moving river, even, so the road kind of helps manage it, but by, widening should help, but by creating that capability to take the water out of the alley between 4th and 5th, and that going on, we should be able to look at other parts of the city too to figure out where we're gonna kind of offset what's going on here. And I know that's a concern. I tend to agree, but I live on the river, and seeing water shoot out the storm drain it's pretty powerful to see what kind of water we have going on in Hudson. So I think we're gonna have a pretty decent handle on that as we go forward. So we'll try to keep you up to date on that as much as we can. Am I the last to comment? Do you want to comment
I
some more?
just have a question, sir. When you were just up at the mic, did the DNR tell you how much this would add to the rainwater? What percentage of the runoff? I mean, not rainwater.
No, without specific information. It was just a conversation about increasing impervious surface area and the existing permit and what that means for Hudson. But like you said, there's offsets elsewhere. It's the reduction overall that needs to occur. And whether you do it here in increments, with rain gardens along the route or something, or you do a much bigger project in some other area that's being developed where you can establish a much larger infiltration basin or something. It's just that in the big picture, Hudson has to reduce its load to the St. Croix River for nutrients, primarily phosphorus. I don't know off the top of my head what the pounds reduction is, but it's in the TMDL that was signed by both states a couple of years ago. And in every watershed, every city that has a permit, they get a number that they have to achieve through various means that they decide are best.
Yep. And if we don't comply, we have problems for sure. We'll get fined and other things like that. So we're gonna work hard to make sure we don't have any problems. Right, Tom? Tom?
Correct.
Okay. Anybody, other comments? Well, again, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and when I first look at it, I'm like, the bike path route is ideal. If you don't have any parking there, delivery vehicles can still use part of the bike lane for stopping and moving. So we're not really shutting off the access to the road. There is space for other vehicles to be there and do what they have to do without having parking. So I thought, well, bike lanes. I've also heard the other side where, maybe we, at 9th Street, we reroute the bike route down to Orange. We could go that way. We could reroute stuff down to 7th or Locust Street on 7th. Tom's point, and I've got a lot of feedback on wanting to keep parking at between 3rd and 4th Street for sure. There are commercial properties down there, so you could run bike lanes all the way down there and then have them get off at 4th and go either way. You could have a safe ride to school and then have a other trail going down Locust, so it'd be kind of nicely manage that, but not have bike lanes going from 4th to 2nd Street. So that would be one way to accommodate that.
If I could, just one closing comment, and again, the direction we've received to date has us going down the path of building a section.
I know that.
With the parking.
Right.
With that, if these, both of these alternates are 36-foot wide, this does not preclude anything happening 1 year down the road, 2 year down the road, relative to changing this section to become this section. It would take some paint, some additional paint removal, some additional pavement marking, and some additional signage, but both are 36-foot width, and with parking considerations, no parking considerations, certain blocks maybe should remain parking, maybe it all goes away. Maybe the county's talking about a different route for bikes. I just want to throw that out, that, again, don't want to be repetitive, but that's the route we're heading down right now. It is flexible to change in the future with, let's say, minor pavement marking and signage.
Well, what I'm hearing is from 4th Street on up, people are not very concerned about parking. Is that correct? Get a show of hands on that. Do you live on Vine Street? Yeah. I'm only being silly. So it's our job to at some point make a decision. I don't know if we want to do it tonight, but we could certainly make a recommendation to council. I'm sorry, sir, did you have a comment?
I have a question. Scott Peterson, 322 Vine.
Okay.
I guess I'm really curious, is there going to be a meeting in the future to talk about how long, say, the section of Vine between 3rd and 4th will be closed for the people that have businesses on that part of the street? Will it be closed a month, 2 months?
Go ahead.
And I'm curious too, where is all the 6,000 cars going to go as a detour? Will they end up on St. Croix Street and County Road A? I'm just curious. Thank you.
Relative to your first question, we would plan another neighborhood meeting prior to construction startup. What we've done typically, or what we would like to do, is have a contractor on board and get the plans and specifications. Will have some sequencing and some parameters that he has to bid the work in. We cannot tell him how to build it exactly. That's means and methods and means. We get ourselves into a little bit of trouble that way. But we definitely will have him bid it from a sequencing standpoint. Once we know who the contractor is, we will get a schedule from him, and we'll have another neighborhood meeting and try to answer as many questions as we can relative to how this is going to be sequenced. Because we all know we can't pull out thousands of feet of street. It's not going to work from traffic. It's not going to work from an erosion control standpoint. It just doesn't work. So the specifications will have some guidelines. Let's put up strict guidelines that you can only do so much before so much restoration is taken care of behind you. And we will have another neighborhood meeting before construction starts up.
Okay. Detour-wise, I think that'll be, you're right, a bit of a challenge. But, we made it through the Wisconsin Street. That was kind of tricky, but worked out good. The company that did that did an amazing job, and they were very quick, and they were very accommodating to people that lived along there and how all that worked out. So hopefully that'll be the same. I know what you're saying, Tom, but, what I'm hearing is, at least from my perspective, is that most of it, if it were bike lane on both sides, all the way down to 4th Street, would be an okay recommendation.
Yes, correct.
Well, Steve, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but from an engineering perspective, we can go with either one.
Right, it's the same road.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. So we don't slow it down by anything we do, as long as we.
Well, I guess, again, we're hoping to bid this in about a month. I guess, I don't know if it's a perfect world. We would like to know which one it is in a month, because we're gonna have to potentially, we're gonna have to pick one to put the bid unit quantities in for one of these. Now, granted, is it the end of the world if we would, I would prefer not to be out there in the summer doing change orders to change from this to this, adding signs, then we have to get different pricing. It can be done that way, don't get me wrong, we can do it that way. But it would be nice to have the bid package that's bid, have one of these options as, that's what we're building.
I think, personally, I think we're ready to make a recommendation to go to council, because we're gonna have to kick it around there for a while. That might even take 2 meetings. It might even come back to Public Works.
You know, we have a month, correct, Steve?
So I guess,
He's looking at me, no?
no, we gotta kinda, dial it in, so I'm gonna make a motion to recommend that we do, the majority of the project to 4th Street, from 4th Street to 9th Street with bike lanes, and then from 4th to 1st Street, with parking as it currently stands. Because 2nd Street,
Well, I didn't know that was one of our options.
what do you mean?
So you're gonna bid, did I misunderstand what you said?
Bike pass from 4th to 9th. There's currently parking on 4th to 3rd. There's currently no
So we're
parking.
building part of this and part of this?
Why can't we do that?
Well, that's something I didn't know we were
I know you
considering.
engineers can do it.
Well, we can build anything, it's a question of, I don't know, I think there's issues with alignment on bikes.
Hello?
I gotta think about that.
Yeah, I think there's issues with that, frankly.
Can you,
What do you do with bikes that are biking along and all of a sudden we have parking?
No, we have no parking. We have no parking.
Okay, wait, maybe I.
there's parking on 3rd and 4th, and then 2nd and 3rd, because there's churches,
Earlier.
right, that we could move the bike routes off to the, both sides, and that they wouldn't need to continue to bike along that.
Oh, so as you go west, you move the bikes off?
Yeah.
At what intersection?
4th Street, 4th and Vine.
Where are they going?
Because if you're going downtown, it'd be really nice to go down Locust Street, and now you're downtown.
I would like time to think through that, just without throwing out a recommendation right now.
I don't think that's that challenging. I
No,
don't.
okay, just.
Can we make the recommendation, and then you could give us a up or down by council?
Sure.
That'd be all right? Okay. Well, that's my motion then.
I'll second it so we can talk about it.
Okay, that's right.
Because
That's all I'm talking about. We could change our minds.
I'm really concerned about you no longer have a safe way for bikes to cross Second Street now.
Yeah.
Vine Street is is either side until you get to the next stoplight. It's not safe to cross.
Yeah, you would go down, actually, you would go down to whatever, Vine and Walnut.
Yeah, that would have to be the. that'd
That's
be
a
the
lot of
only-
traffic at Vine and Second to have bikes trying to cross there.
You got lights. That's, either way, either side of that is not good.
Well, we could widen that section of the road, even wider to accommodate parking. Just a thought. Oh, man. Okay, motion and a second. Is there any more discussion?
I don't know what we can vote on without knowing if we can even do it. If it's feasible.
Well, it's just paint. I mean, not to sound simple, but it is just
It's
paint.
not just paint.
Again, I barely understood what you said, and maybe I have to listen a little closer, but we're talking about bike lanes going down to the west, to 4th Street.
Yeah.
And are they both going north? Are they both going south? Are they, I don't know where they're going.
Well,
So I-
probably they should both go south. So
Then we got this bike lane crossing over. I don't know, I'd just like to think about it a little bit. I mean, I don't.
Well, they could go either way, because kids are gonna go to school. If some kids go that way, they could go to school. You can actually have it go both. That whole 4th Street could be a bike route with painted lines on it as well.
So we would have a bike intersection, so to
Yeah, 'cause
speak,
there-
at 4th Street.
let's just say 4th
We'd
Street
have
is now a
east-west,
north-south
and
bike
we'd have
route.
north-south.
And it would be
We'd
a
create a
route,
bike intersection
not a-
at 4th.
Painted bike lanes.
Again, I'd like to look
Fourth
at it,
Street's
sorry.
on the local.
Well, right, and you said you
Wouldn't
could,
be
we
painted
could.
Yeah, we
talk-
can get back to you.
I think
within
we
a-
need to get the rest of the people involved, because I think we're to the point where it would be beneficial to hear from the rest of the council now, because given the time frame left going forward, so. All right, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'm gonna abstain from voting on
Okay.
it because
We need to move it forward, agreed, and then see
Any other
where,
thoughts or ideas can come up, and then we'll have, yeah, so.
and we will have some engineering analysis in between.
We
We
could
got till
even have a
Monday.
meeting. I'll sketch out what I'm talking about. We could talk to Denny too, so. Okay. You guys want to do a public works update, or you got enough for today?
Just a couple things.
Okay.
We did talk, it was brought up at this meeting. I think currently we're working on a stormwater inventory with our structures along with KIP and the water and wastewater. I think we're basically down to the finalizing the contract. Close.
No, the contract has been finalized, along with the letter of engagement. What we are waiting on currently is the DNR grant to get here so that we can execute it. We have to do some, we have to do some additional work to define how we're going about the scope and budget to get back. And they have to approve that prior to them releasing the approval on our grant money, which is $73,500. We're waiting, and we don't want to start any work at this point because any work we do now is not eligible for reimbursement. So the first thing we need to do is get the agreement from the DNR, execute the agreement, then we can start.
Okay.
And along with that, there's a group, stormwater group that's been out in the Chippewa, Eau Claire area. We're considering joining forces with River Falls and St. Joseph's and communities in this area. I think the group is going to be
Thank you all for
called,
coming, not to interrupt, but if you choose to leave, thank you.
Rain to Rivers. It's another stormwater group that meets and they get information and public outreach, and we talk about ways to have stormwater improvements. So we have things rolling with stormwater, urban forestry. We're working on getting the tree software updated. I did order the bare root trees for our urban forestry project this summer. Some of the residents in the community, the Urban Forestry Committee has adopted a program for this year, and we have a tree that's, we're gonna start a tree of the year for 2016. That tree is a Kentucky coffee tree. We have ordered extra trees, and residents who wish can purchase those bare root trees at a discounted price through the grant, and they could plant those on private property. So anyone who may be interested along Vine Street that would like a tree in their yard to help some of the issues, the Kentucky coffee tree is tree of the year for 2016. We'll have some more information to follow as far as ordering, and we have limited numbers, so first come, first serve. Burton Field restoration is about 90 to 95, Burton Field restroom renovation is 90 to 95% completed. We did get the rinks open, but now with this warm weather this week, upcoming weekend, I'm couldn't guarantee if they're gonna be open or not, but they have been used very heavily the last week or so. Tree trimming, if we don't get a lot more snow, we're gonna try to get the crews doing some tree trimming on the boulevard trees the next week or so.
I had just one real quick update. We submitted for a grant application with the DOT for bridge repairs at Walnut Street Bridge.
Yeah.
So there was a two-part grant application we were gonna do, one to the DOT and one in April with the DNR. So we have one out the door, at least for an application for funding.
Cool.
That's all I had.
Yep.
Couple things, wastewater treatment plant roofs, they started moving in, so by the end of this week, they'll have some equipment down there. By the start of next week they'll be starting, so you will actually see some work down there. There's a March 15th end date on that, so they're gonna be moving right along pretty quick, getting those roofs taken care of. And then the only thing that I had on the Vine Street project, I guess, a benefit actually to all of the people that live on Vine Street is we are installing new sanitary sewer laterals to each individual home that does come out to Vine Street. So that's a benefit, you're getting a brand new lateral all the way up to your lot line.
gonna be
at
new
our
water,
cost,
too.
at our cost. And we are also installing new water main and water services to each individual property too. So, if you do have any water pressure concerns, it definitely would help, you know, and things like that. So, that's about all I have.
All right, items for future agendas?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a couple calls this week about alleyways and heavy trucks and alleys being damaged by some of the heavier trucks, so I don't know if we can just keep that on the radar or bring it up at another meeting. I don't know if there's other communities that have ordinances on weight restrictions on alleys. I know that it's kind of coincidental, but it's been brought up twice this week about people have concerns about that, so just maybe keep it on the radar for the near future, and maybe I can maybe try to get a hold of other communities and see if they have ordinances regarding heavier trucks going down alleys.
Okay. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you again very much.